I'm DRutter. Today's 01/01/2020, and this is the third video in my channel highlight series highlighting the tumultuous events of 2011. It'll be a look at where I've been, what lessons we've learned together, and hopefully provide some direction and motivation as we finish an old year and ring up a new. If you haven't seen the first video, 2006 through 9, or the second video, 2010, you'll find the links below. The end of this video will contain a link to the next one once it's available. In 2011, my focus remained precious metals as the silver chart climbed to a peak of $50 and then famously crashed, sending the online community into turmoil. Bitcoin first appeared on my radar and was discussed a few times, though my understanding of it was still basic. I watched live as a tsunami swept thousands of Japanese people to their deaths in April, and reported on the Fukushima nuclear meltdown story closely. It was a dark and rainy year in Vancouver, but I attempted to continue my gardening videos, and devoted some coverage to the early Occupy movement. My 2011 uploads included valuable historical data, unique footage, several predictions which have come to pass, and a personal record amount of videos. YouTube's censorship was still mostly in the background, and my channel was well liked and supported, so I was free to cover any topic in the way I wanted to, making for an interesting variety of content. Let's get into 2011. For the first few months of the year, precious metals were on a tear, and silver jumped to its previous all-time 1980 nominal high of $50. When the US announced that they'd again killed Osama bin Laden for supposedly doing 9/11, silver peaked and collapsed, spending the rest of the year bouncing between 26 and 40. Early in the year, I explained my understanding of a concept related to money and currency, saying something with intrinsic value has value contained within it because of its usefulness and rarity. Then I showed how to remove milk spots from silver bullion, a persistent problem finally solved by community collaboration. That video has almost 100,000 views and 1,200 likes. Next, I used my entire stack, including my business stack and my girlfriend's stack, as footage for a rap music video. Still in January, I felt the 5-year chart looked bullish despite a pullback to $27. I said buy on the dips and predicted it would have trouble dropping back under $25 and that the US dollar won't be the reserve currency of the world for much longer. Then I released Tyranny Checklist, one of my best videos, which was heavily censored from going viral. In February, I introduced the original 20 for 20 coin and the 1-ounce RCM silver grizzly bear, along with some other cool silver coins. Then I reported that Vancouver's silver shortage had resumed with a vengeance, and there was a mention of the Silver Liberation Army and the Silver Bugs group on Facebook. Next, I introduced the silver Indica, follow-up to the widely popular silver sativa, and became the designated international distributor for that popular line of bullion. Soon after, I predicted silver was heading to $50 within a couple months, reported that the physical shortage continues, showed a raw silver nugget, a titanium bar, and offered to trade silver coins for exceptional heirloom tomato seeds, which I received later in the year and incorporated into my stock. Then I became even more bullish, declaring that silver will be thousands of dollars per ounce long term, and predicted many stackers would get rich. Next came Notice to Earthlings, You Are Slaves, with a veiled veganism message. Late in the month, I confirmed the Vancouver silver shortage had become a total outage, calling several local dealers and playing their responses. To finish the month, I noted that silver eagles aren't marked with a fineness as almost every other silver coin is, and I reported that the US Mint was out of silver blanks to make eagles. I also noted that the Canadian dollar was worth more than the US dollar. By March, my videos were routinely getting 2,000 to 10,000 views each, and 100 to 200 comments. I did a video at Grandma Drutter's house, telling lessons from the past about inflation, money, food storage, and more. Next came a video upload as the quake and tsunami hit Fukushima, in which I said the physical silver shortage is beginning to have some effect on the digital price manipulation and someday will overcome it. Then I reported on 3 nuclear meltdowns at Fukushima which were being ignored by the mainstream media, the danger to North America denied by government and media, and I said that being prepared isn't paranoid, it's wise. I also correctly predicted that Fukushima would release more radiation than Chernobyl. After that, I held a vote on Is Metal Money? The results were 533 yes and 29 no. Then I developed a bad case of military-industrial complex, vocalizing my anger about Allied forces, including Canada, going into Libya, comparing it to the illegitimate attacks in the Middle East since 2001. I said, we have to say no to perpetual war, or we're all responsible for this. As precious metals continued to climb with global political unrest and economic turmoil, I made a distinction between investigating the truth and fear-based doom porn. Later in March, I correctly reported TEPCO had lost control of the reactors at Fukushima, despite what they were saying, and criticized the attacks on Libya, saying, "We are the terrorists," and, quote, "This is the end of Western civilization." In April, I continued my Fukushima coverage, describing the situation as the radioactive rods being rinsed by the Pacific Ocean. Silver was at a 30-year high, and gold was at an all-time high, $1,450 US. Next, I reported on the launch of SpotMex, a bullion website by Stella Concepts, and noted the gold-to-silver ratio was below 35 for the first time in years. I declared that cannabis prohibition is about profit and control. Cannabis isn't harmful, and it should never have been criminalized, and that prohibition harms society and doesn't work. I noted the BRICS countries moving away from the US dollar and said soon all fiat currencies will fail and we'll need a new system. As silver hit $44 US, I was very bullish, especially for those who don't own any physical silver bullion. I said this isn't the ultimate top, and I also said we may see a pullback to 36. I said if you don't hold it, you don't own it, and that alternative media is where you can get the truth, and mainstream media is manipulated by agendas. Canadian bullion shortage continued. I wished everyone a happy 420, and said don't let bad laws stop you from using cannabis. Next, it was my first coverage of Vancouver's huge 420 event, which in 2011 was all about Free Mark Emery, and there was a very pervasive theme of, quote, legalization and vote for cannabis freedom from Dana Larson and Jody Emery, but I appreciated the free market vibe and the sense of people power. At the end of April, I uploaded historic live footage as silver hit its all-time high of $50 US. I excitedly predicted mania and a pop, but had no idea when. Predicted precious metal price manipulation would end as it continued to be brought to light, and as the Fed relentlessly inflated the currency supply. On May 1st, I reported as the silver price crashed $6 on news of Osama bin Laden's latest assassination. I said he was CIA, the official story is a lie, a wedge between awake people and sheeple is increasing. Harper was re-elected and given majority government. I said voting does not work. I said the whole system and the economy is fake. Don't participate. Canada and the USA are living under tyranny, and we need an uprising to take our countries back from warmongering globalists. Nice light video there. Then I endorsed Ron Paul for US President in 2012 and reported that TEPCO admits total meltdown of rods and that radiation is getting worse. I stated I believed TEPCO and the government were still covering up the seriousness of the disaster. It was my first mention of cannabis cures cancer with a link to a 2007 Harvard study, and said this life-saving info won't be in the mainstream, so it's up to us to spread it. Then I did a video on why metal is money, the long version, starting with the formation of the solar system. It included an introduction to nickel coin roll hunting, and I opened a really nice roll of untouched rare 1970s on camera. Next, I speculated that the Fukushima nuclear plant failure was a result of the earthquake, not the ensuing tsunami which hit the plant. I reported that there were now 3 full confirmed meltdowns and predicted cleanup would go on for decades or centuries despite media claiming near containment. My silver price forecast felt it could pull back to 30, but I recommended viewers consider having a core position of physical metal regardless of price. Late in May came a video on intellectual dishonesty, giving examples of celebrating Memorial or Remembrance Day while advocating peace, animal lovers who aren't vegan, and religion in the truth movement. To begin June, I did my first Bitcoin analysis. I noted the price was up from 70 cents to $40 recently, and stated Bitcoin isn't money because it isn't a tangible asset. But if a network of people give it uses, it can become a viable currency. Until then, it will be used as an investment vehicle. It's interesting to see what I got right, and in what ways I underestimated Bitcoin at first glance. Then, prompted by a bill Ron Paul was introducing, I stated cannabis does not need to be legalized, we just need to end prohibition. The war on drugs is a failed scam. I spoke against Mark Emery's extradition to U.S. prison for selling cannabis seeds and called the Afghanistan war unjust. Finding almost no other Bitcoin coverage on YouTube, I noted the Bitcoin price had just crashed briefly to 1 cent when the MTG Gox exchange was hacked. I said, as a currency, it must be less centralized and less vulnerable to abuse, or it will fail. I felt cryptocurrency was an interesting idea, and something similar to Bitcoin will probably eventually succeed. In July, I recalled a very dark and wet 18 months, timidly suggesting possible weather modification, a conspiracy theory that wasn't vindicated until 2018, when it was announced such actions have been routine for several years. Next, I reported that gold was still making new all-time highs, while silver was choppy and sideways since the fall from 50, and finished up showing off a silver chain from my grandmother. In August, I said hi to Charlie McGrath and encouraged him to end his rant videos with, "That's all I got," which he did until he died unexpectedly in 2016. I said we should all support members of the alternative media because the mainstream media isn't giving us the truth. As September began, I uploaded my Burning Man 2011 coverage, which would end up being my last. Then I reported on the Occupy Wall Street movement starting up in New York City, which I admired for being grassroots and anti-corruption. The mainstream media was not covering it, and YouTube was censoring uploads about it. In October, the mainstream media finally started to cover Occupy. The Greek economy was collapsing. Next, I cheered that the majority was finally starting to act like one. My Occupy support video was heavily censored. As the weather cooled and after several requests, I uploaded a video on how to store tomato seeds. Next, I showed more support for the Vancouver branch of Occupy and decided it was time for me to get more involved in offline activism. Prompted by the recent surge of people power, I did a short production called Why We Must Question Authority, using one of my favorite Carl Sagan quotes. In November, I recorded a late-night backyard rant calling for a decentralized, digital, collective consciousness so humanity can evolve beyond greed, racism, division, and war to create a heaven on earth for all. I warned that we must avoid being trapped in a technocratic control grid, and shared my belief that we have to live this life to the fullest in case it's all we've got. Next, I reported on the death at Occupy Vancouver, and that my grandma supports the Occupy protesters and wants it to continue. Then I recognized we are witnessing a central bank takeover of a society as Greece's leader was replaced by the former head of the ECB. The New World Order is a society controlled by technocrats, I warned. Also that month, after customers requested it, I began accepting Interac e-transfer on my bullion website, CanadianSilverBullion.com. Had I started to accept Bitcoin at that time instead, my life would have gone considerably differently. In December, I repeated my understanding that real money has intrinsic value, value contained within, which is a product of its scarcity and usefulness. I commended viewers for watching alternative media channels like mine that provide valuable content for free. To finish the year, I documented that Ron Paul was winning, his numbers going up and beating other candidates despite very little media coverage. I said I believe that the mainstream media is corrupt and lying. Our freedoms are being removed rapidly, and if we don't do something very soon, dark times could be coming. That was 2011. Stay tuned for the next highlight video of the DRutter channel. 2012 was an eventful year around the world, and in my personal life, as governments consolidated power over their people and social media giants joined the mainstream media in doing everything possible to keep certain truths from being widely known.